Well, hi there, friends. This is Emily Craig, and it is Friday, the 7th of February, 2020. And there's a lot going on that's not discussed in the media right now. One of the questions that has arisen is, what is the Chinese military doing? How come it's absent? And another question is, whatever happened to the history of the Tartarians? And another one is, how come our horizons are flat when we're supposedly living on a curved surface? There are all kinds of questions, and one of them that isn't getting answered is, why aren't our churches weighing in to the ethical questions being raised in the political dimension between the left and the right? One of the things that I keep repeating over and over again is that the methods of the left, the methods of the Frankfurt School and Saul Alinsky and Marx, are methods of infiltration and corruption that are not contained in any church doctrine or method in use either under the commandments or by Jesus, so that the methods of the left are almost totally destructive in their very nature. The end justifies the means is the meme and the slogan that the left uses to justify their tactics and strategies. All right. But then I went on from there. I began looking at, what does the church have to say about behavior in and among its own followers? And aside from the daily homily, which points to a single beatitude of Jesus under a single set of circumstances, under a very narrow perspective, what we see is that the church is not weighing in on the ethics of war profiteering, drug running, gun running, human trafficking, body parts marketing. The church has sanitized itself and is speaking in depth only about its beliefs and its doctrines and its dogmas. And it will return constantly to the teachings of doctrines and its catechism and its creeds and its statements of belief. And they don't talk about behavior. Neither does the church point out, we have these holy books. We have the Old Testament and we have the New Testament. And the Talmud has attached to the Old Testament, and Calvinism has attached to the New Testament, that somehow change the ethic and change the behavior of the people so affected. All right? But that's not being discussed. How the behavior of Christians is changed by Calvinism's declaration that salvation is only by faith and not by works. You understand what that did to Pilgrim's Progress and Christian behavior? It buried it. Do you understand that the Talmud, written in Babylon, reflects a lot of the Babylonian doctrines and worship of Baal and Moloch and the us versus them mentality of the imperial elite of Babylon? So that our behavior is altered when we accept the creeds of the church, but we're not told how it's altering our behavior, right? And if we speak to behavior a great deal, we're distanced. Okay, have in the last several years tried to re-affiliate with several churches that are very, very deep churches, whose history go back 1,000 years. Okay, the Episcopal, the Catholic, the Orthodox, and the Mormons go back way back too. So do Jehovah's Witnesses. Okay, so do the Seventh-day Adventists. And their practice is that unless you have been through their mind-bending doctrine program, usually it's about 2 years, in order to be a full bloodline member of their church, you have to go through their 2-year baptism, confirmation, catechism program. You can't walk in the door with 50 years of Bible study and a lot of experience with sectarianism. You can't walk in the door and begin discussing issues of behavior with the professionals and the leaders of the church, because you're not a bona fide one of them. What this has done is nullify, suppress, and sequester individuals, covenant individuals, who are talking about how we ought to solve some of our social, political problems utilizing behavioral strategies, and we have nowhere to speak to it. There's nowhere who will listen to us, not in any covenantal situation. This has changed the fabric of religiosity in the United States and in Britain. The people who are studying human behavior have had to leave the church because the church is only interested in its own history, teachings, dogma, doctrine. And if you're a God-loving behaviorist, there's nowhere for you to speak at all. Not in church. Now, I have quite a bit of a good time speaking in forums of people who are unchurched, atheist, and agnostic. And there, speaking to behavior is a very sensible thing to do. But the limits and boundaries of covenantal behavior do not make any sense to those of the atheist, agnostic, and humanist and behaviorist orientations. All right. So behavior is getting short shrift in the West. The West is not paying attention to the holy book teachings in the Quran, which teach taqiyya, which is a form of double dealing, believing one thing, saying something else. Jizya, which is the protection tax racketeering practice. And jihad, the divide and conquer, us versus them, we're going to overcome everybody strategy that is in the Quran, that is not discussed openly. And so now Western countries are faced with large populations of people who call themselves religious, whose practices out of the Quran, which are not in the Bible, not in the Old Testament, not in the New Testament, defy Western English and common law openly. And because the Calvinist and Orthodox and Catholic churches are not calling out the behaviors that diverge from Jesus and behaviors that diverge from holy law, the public at large is kept ignorant of the fact that the Quran teaches divergent behavior that is unscriptural, unkind, to say the least, and unlawful in most of the Western countries. And I haven't even gone into the topic of gender problems between hyper masculine men and women in the Quranic medium. So there's too much that is not being discussed that should be and needs to be and must be discussed and brought up, that the churches are not permitting to bring up, that the mainstream media and the social media are deliberately shadow banning and suppressing because it's not popular. It's not popular to talk about different teachings of behavior and how that affects society in the large perspective. I thought I'd share this with you and see whether there's anyone who finds that this makes sense and that you'd like to contribute and add to it. How do we open up the dialogues on topics that our churches have suppressed for hundreds of years? It's a challenge, but we keep at it, and I hope you'll keep at it too. Today's Friday, tomorrow's Saturday. We'll have History Reset again. There's a whole series of anti-topics that never get brought up that I'll be talking about tomorrow. So we'll see you then. Thanks for coming by. Bye-bye.